Alright, so in this video I'm going to show you the current progress of the major update for the RTS engine. We're just going to take a look at what features have been implemented, what systems have been implemented, and then at the end we'll discuss what is going to happen in the future and the current roadmap and what should you guys expect in the near future at least. So let's jump right to it. So we are currently in a RTS engine scene. If you already have used the RTS engine, then things in this scene might seem already familiar to you. We have our game manager, we have a set of game dependencies that the RTS engine requires for the map scene to work. So we have some essential dependencies that you definitely need in your scene to make the game work, but then we also have things coming out of modules, and maybe the first thing you notice here is that we have a bunch of modules that were part of the core asset in the current available version in the asset store. So for example, movement and combat, you would find them in the non-modules section previously, but now they are fully fledged modules. And we can also go to the project section right here, and let's resize this a little bit up. The current modules we have are cameras, combat, game feel, health, movement network, and selection tasks and UI components. So the goal here is pretty much, if you don't need one of these components, you can just delete it and go on with your project and expect that everything else will work seamlessly with each other. We can also come back to the main folder of the RTS engine, which now has the modules subfolder we just looked at. We also have this core folder, and this one here has the core scripts, which are part of these essential dependencies that we have here in the scene. And then we also have the RTS folder, which would be the RTS engine asset pretty much. And then if we go to the scripts here, we also have some systems and components that kind of make the modules work together in order to achieve the game of a real-time strategy. And as we can see here, it has its own assembly definition, and so an RTS game will definitely need the core assets, but it will also require movement, combat, UI components, selection, health, and then in the future also buildings, resource collection, and other systems that we already have in the current version that need to be rewritten for the current major upgrade. Alright, so right now we're just gonna jump into this scene and play a little bit and see how it currently plays. We also have some new UI right here, and this demo scene also uses new models which are more sophisticated than the demo that we currently have. So we can see here we have a bunch of archers that are shooting arrows at each other. We can select them, we can move them like we used to. And another exciting part about this major upgrade would be the editor window. I'm trying to make sure that pretty much all units and all entity dependencies of units and buildings and resources, they all have their data defined and represented into scriptable objects. So when we go here, for example, and we go to general, we have our home tab. We have, this is the build data that tells us what version it is. You can select here the scriptable object, and it will lead you to its location in the project tab. You can also clone it, delete it, and do all of that from here, or create a new one, or search for specific ones. No faction types currently defined, or NPC types. We have terrain areas, the same thing, scriptable objects that we can just quickly navigate to. Yeah, we can take a look at the health data. This is, for example, a component that defines a maximum health of 100, and that can be used on different entities. We have movement data. This is the component or the data responsible for the entity movement. Take a look at the combat section here, when we have pretty much the same thing, the entity combat data. You know, we have general damage, line of sight, all of the configurations that we are used to and more. But let's go to the entities tab and take a look at the Archer unit right here. One essential thing I want to show you in this video is the newish workflow on how to create things and how to edit things. So right now we are in the editor window, we are in the entities section, and we're looking at entity prefabs. So we can create a new unit by clicking here, and instead of that we are going to clone this Archer unit and then create a Knight unit. So the first thing we're going to do, maybe we can just select it, see what it is here in the scene, on the project tab, and then we can just hit clone. And right now we have a new unit with an identifier of Archer_1. So we can click this unit and then we can open its prefab. It already also has cloned the prefab of the Archer. Let's go ahead here and give it a different identifier. Let's rename the prefab to Knight 2. Rename file, yes. Let's also go to its scriptable data here and then enable this. All right, so back to our Knight entity. We have its prefab now open in the scene right here. I guess the first thing we're going to do is find a different model. So we're gonna go here and enable this one. So this would be our Knight unit. We also wanna remove this bow and replace it with something like a sword. So it will be something like this. We also want to take a look at its animations, and we already have an animator that is prepared for this Knight, and that is this one right here. The next thing we can do is we can go through our components and see what needs to be changed from an Archer to a Knight. A simple Knight that does close range damage, and then we can set the name here. We can also find maybe a different icon for it, the same radius because they are the same size, and maybe instead of long range unit right here, we can go and set it to close range unit. Nice. And immediately we can also go back to the editor here, and we can see all of our settings updated, including the categories here. So we have our Knights, and they share all of these categories except for close range and long range. And in the future, when we have like more units or more entities, you can pretty much filter by category. So if I click here on long range unit, I only have the Archer left. All right, back to our Knight prefab. Let's go ahead and go through the current scripts. So animation, everything pretty much stays the same. We want to idle. Oh, instead of bow shoot, here we have something called swing sword. Yes, here is the swing sword parameter. The attributes remain the same. The combat definitely needs to change, but we're gonna come back to that later. Here we have a target renderer of the old model. We just changed this one too, so that the faction colors will be on this new model. The health component here has 100 health, and it's called, we can keep this one for the Knight too, no difference there. Or if the movement also remains the same, we're not gonna touch that. So like the Archer and the Knight, they both have the same movement speed and everything else right here. Selection also remains the same. Right now is taking a look at the combat. So here we have the combat settings for the Archer, which we can find right here. So we can either go, for example, to combat and then find the entity combat dependency data and clone it, for example, or create a new one from here, or we can find the prefab and then we go here, and in the static data we just clone select it. So this will create a new entity dependency for the combat system, or the entity combat, which has a new code. We're going to change that now. We're going to keep the entity combat at the end, but then put Knight over here, and maybe also change its actual asset name. All right, and then let's come back here and just take a look at the configurations here. So rate of fire gonna be the same, target pitter is gonna be the same here, idle animation, they both share that. For the damage, we're also maybe gonna give this one less damage, so instead of doing 10 it does 8. Line of sight, we probably don't really need it so much, but we're just gonna keep it on. Maybe we can turn it off later. The target finder here, so like the archers can find anything in 80 unit radius. We're just gonna maybe put this back to like something like 40. For when we have a target and then we are still not in range to engage in combat, maybe we're moving towards the target or whatever. These are the settings for that state. So our combat range, we want to be in range of like 5 units in order to attack. So like we want to be very close, as it's a close range unit. We don't want to enforce mean combat. Activate on range enter, yes. And then the follow distance, since our target finder distance is 40, the follow distance maybe 50, a little bit above that. And then relink in the target distances, like if we have a movement target, how often do we reset the target position to engage with it in combat when it moves like 10 units from its original position when it was set as a target. And now for the main combat settings, which are the combat loop pretty much. So when we are actively now engaging with the target here, instead of bow shoot, we have swing sword. And now we have a bunch of this is the combat loop for the archer pretty much that we saw earlier. So in the beginning, it pretty much spawns the arrow combat object. It spawns it, but then it has it in delay mode, and it keeps it there for whatever time it is that suits the animation. And then after that, the combat object is launched, and during that we also play the animation for shooting the bow. And then we wait for some time so that the animation of the attack animation ends, and then we wait again here for much shorter, but we also reset our animator arcs so that we go back to the idle state so we can start another combat loop. For this one, we have different goals, so we will have a different combat loop. All right, so the first combat loop is, let's maybe take a look at our animation of how the sword will be swung. And it's this. So this is how long it lasts for. And so what we want to do is have this point right here, which is at 0.19 seconds or something like that, to actually apply the damage. All right, so let's go back here. Our first element in the combat loop is that we're going to wait for that amount of time, but we will also play the animation. So swing sword, we're gonna enable that. And then 2, we have idle, we want to be not idle anymore. So that's our first element. Our second element would be, right now after the 0.19 seconds have passed, we want to apply the damage. So we pick that. And in here, we don't have any change of animation parameters. Then the next state will be us waiting again for the animation to be over. And I think that is around 0.86. And then the last step is where we're not really going to wait for any time, but we use this one to reset the animation parameters. Oh no, this is for the controller. We go to the parameters right here. Let's disable this, and we're going back to idle so we can start another combat loop. Another setting that I forgot to update here is that the archer is allowed to engage with the terrain without like an active valid target entity. And here in the settings, it can only do it for one iteration. So if we instruct it to attack the terrain, it will just shoot an arrow at the terrain position once and then starts looking for another target or just stops. We can make it keep attacking the terrain if we set this to normal, but for our knight, we don't want it to be able to attack the terrain, so we're going to disable this. Right now we have a new entity that pretty much differs from the archer, only in its combat component, but then the movement component is shared between both of them, the health is shared between both of them. And for this example, we're just going to keep it like that. So I'm just going to go back to the scene right now, and I will find my knight unit. I will select it, and here it is. I will bring it right here, go to the scene, and maybe move it to view. Alright, so we're gonna make sure that it's at the wanted height, and we're just gonna place a bunch of those right here. Gonna have these, and then we're gonna have these and move them to the other faction, and then we're just gonna put them here. And that's it. Let's test it. Alright, so now we are testing the new knight unit. Our archer units are, as always, working like they did before, and these would be the new knight units. We're just gonna move them. You can see here, you can't attack the terrain, so you can have that error right here, and we're going to have them engage the other. And yeah, we can see the death animation right here. They have to attack from close range, and they're working as expected. I've reworked the demo map a little bit, adding more units and more variety, and built it. And now we're going to see this in action in a multiplayer setting. So the host is loaded, the client is loaded, and everything is syncing pretty well. Have a bunch of units here, a bunch of units there. We can select these and move them to attack here. You can also, yeah. And hopefully you can find this demo if you want to try it out yourself in the Discord server. And this is the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.